Today, we're going to do things a little bit different this time. I am going to read a bunch of quotations, phrase, or just ideas or principles, definitions, and Fritz, you'll do the commenting.
I like that.
Welcome back to the Unlearn Show, the show where we undefine, rethink, unlimit, and most importantly, unlearn and rethink our behaviors. Fritz, how are you?
I am great. I'm great.
It's such a blessing to be back here, um, to be having this discussion once more. Let's start off with one that we just mentioned a while ago. It says, "Great men plant trees that others will sit under." How do you think about that?
Oh, that's big. Well, you have two actions in this phrase. The first one is to plant, and the other is to sit. Great men plant trees, and you can say other men sit. If you want to break it
Mm,
down, this is what I'm getting. So, the action of to plant requires a different process than to sit. In order to plant, it demands sacrifice. To plant
mm.
means you have to do some digging and you have to do some sowing. When you
Wow.
plant, it's a delayed process. You put in the effort of which you may never reap, but you are leaving a greater legacy. Planting implies a legacy. Sitting
Mm,
implies relaxation. When you sit
mm,
and you get up, you have nothing to show for it. When you plant, it's for the next generation to see. So the two actions. So planting requires sacrifice. And there's this passage says, unless a grain of wheat fall into the ground and dies, it abideth alone. Planting
mm,
requires a process of letting go. You first the seed have to die, then it germinates, a new life springs, and then
right.
after comes the crop. When you sit, is an instant process. You just relax. You pass the
Mm,
time, but you accomplish nothing. So planting requires sacrifice. It's passing on for others. It's investment into the future of which you never enjoy. So great men plant trees that others will sit under. While you are planting, it makes no sense. Many times you're gonna feel like you're wasting time. But this is real life investment. You plant to produce more fruits in others. So it's greater to plant than to sit. Jamie, I was being quite scientific about it, but you tell me
wow, well
how
done.
you want us to take it.
I have nothing further to add. Nothing further to add to that. I'll just move on to the next one. Trust can be earned. Trust can be earned, sorry, but it's better built. I'm not sure where I got that one from. Maybe it's just something that I do. You first of all, I'm that trust can be earned, but it's better built. Do you agree? First of all, I don't know where that came from. It's just somewhere in my diary, written somewhere, and I'm just reading it.
Yes. Well, trust. Hmm. Trust is something that connects two different circumstances or situations. And we're talking about earning trust and building trust. You can earn trust, which is a different process than building trust.
Mm.
To build trust requires vulnerability, requires sensitivity, it requires honesty, openness,
Mm.
but both of them requires time. You don't earn trust overnight, or you don't build trust overnight. They are both a deliberate action. It's an intentional action that it requires commitment to build or to earn trust. To build trust suggests a progressive path of which trust can move from one level to the next level. To earn trust suggests that you may start with a position of mistrust, and then at
Mm.
some point there's a crossover. To build trust suggests levels, but however you take it, trust is something that you cannot touch or see, but it can be felt.
Mm. Mm. Wow, well said. Well said. I love that. Something that you cannot see or hear or taste
Hmm.
or touch, but it can be felt.
Yes.
Mm. Wow. Well,
Maybe like
that's wonderful.
no, go ahead. Yes.
No, that's wonderful. I'm not looking to add anything more to those. Right? I'm just letting you rip. Let's move on to the next one. It's this one is by and I think this one is interesting. It's kind of, you know, off. It's by Dr. Atul Gwande. I'm very sure I'm mispronouncing his name. And he says life is an accumulation of illnesses and the management of the different outcome of each.
Life's an accumulation of what? Illnesses?
Illnesses and the management of the different outcome of each.
and the, and the management of the outcome.
Of the different outcome of each.
Wow. This one is deep.
I'm just reading from my diary.
Yeah, you made
this
it right.
bunch of quotations. Yeah.
Life is an accumulation of illnesses. Hmm.
And the management of the different outcome of each.
Life is an accumulation of illnesses. Wow.
All right. If I'm how I think about this one
Yes.
is you have different ways of looking at life, right? You can look at life as a period where you think of you're more well than you are ill. So it's a period where you're well, but occasionally you get ill. I mean, we're dealing with in this realm now. However, if you would look at life from the opposite side of a period where you're ill and occasionally you get well, then maybe you'll take on a different perspective. Right? It's
Yes,
it
that's deep.
it's
You're right.
right. So it is then true that we can look at life from that perspective, and maybe we would have a greater appreciation for the different illnesses that we have, because that is steady state. Steady state, we are ill. And it's actually true. Most of our lives we carry something: sinusitis, high blood pressure, hypertension. I mean, something is going on within us. How much of our lives do we spend actually well? Completely.
And it goes
No.
back to what is wellness.
So it just presents a different way of looking at it. And how do we manage those illnesses, though? That's sort of defines our mindset around it.
And the illnesses are not necessarily just physical,
Mm,
they're emotional, psychological illnesses.
absolutely.
So it's not so much, so life is not necessarily what comes at you, it's how you respond.
Mm,
It's
that's a model. That's a
10%,
mental idea.
right? You have no control of what comes at you, but you have control over the response, the management of the different outcome of each.
Mm,
You manage the response. And you choose whether your cup is half empty or half full.
absolutely.
And the best way to manage an illness is from perspective of of health, not from the perspective of death. Hmm. So so the half full cup is easier to manage than the half empty cup. What
Say
do you
that
have to say
again.
about it? The
Say that
half
again.
full cup is easier to manage than the half empty cup.
Why? 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 Why is that?
It goes back to perspective. The half full cup, you can see opportunities in the problems. But the half empty cup, you see problems in the opportunities.
Right. Absolutely. However, can I ask the question of what is the end result that you're trying to achieve?
And that's a
So
good point.
it's I'll present this mental model to this discussion: speed and velocity. Right?
Yes.
Speed is movement, and you're moving, and you just keep moving. The difference between speed and velocity is direction. Velocity has direction. And oftentimes we seem very busy doing a lot, but we have no direction. And in the end, we're not getting much done. So the mental model of speed and velocity, I would like to add to this: half full, half empty. What if the goal is to empty the cup? Wouldn't that make a difference in which is easier to manage?
But I see two actions in a half full, half empty cup. You can be filling and emptying at the same time. But you can be emptying and not filling.
Say that again. Say
You,
that again.
you can be filling and emptying at the same time. And that's a sustainable approach because you're refreshing.
Mm.
That's why you have a river versus a pond. The pond is you're filling but not emptying, and it becomes stagnant. The river is you're filling but you're emptying, and you get a flow. And a flow gives you a fresher process, healthier process. But ponding is when I keep filling but I'm not emptying. I keep filling but I'm
Mm.
not emptying. So the half full and half empty, though the levels may be the same, the approaches are different. One brings renewal, while one brings death. So it goes back to a matter of approach.
Right. But I'm trying to argue that it will vary depending on what the goal that you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to kill something, you're trying to kill or destroy one of your beliefs or belief system or processes that you've had and you've re-examined and you want to get rid of that habit, it's wise to look at it as half empty. It's slowly going away. So
But
wouldn't that play a role in half full, half empty, depending on what's in the glass, right?
yes, you're correct. And a good way to empty the glass is to fill it.
Right. Okay. I
Because the
see
more
that. I
you
see your
the more
point.
you pour, it overflows. Yes.
Right. Well, but it's not the most efficient way.
Right.
It's not the most efficient.
You're correct. It's
But
not the most efficient way.
no, because I mean we use it in shipping. You call it the through method for the ballast
Yes.
tanks. So
Yes.
you know you want to exchange the water, ballast water exchange, when you're sailing from one place to another. Um, and you don't want to carry microorganisms that they don't have any natural habitat, natural predators, and they will take over the species in the Caribbean if you take them from Africa. So you have at sea you need to do ballast water exchange. And one of the methods that we use is called the flow through method. But you're required to fill it, to pump into the tank 3 times its capacity to be considered that you have for it to be considered that you have made a complete exchange. While if you're empty and full up, you have made an exchange. So, but I would say this, that to your point, that if you're in ballast condition, you cannot afford the luxury of emptying. So by flowing through, you maintain the state of fullness, which is sometimes very important. So that's why it was probably the most used method until they're now shifting to chemicals and stuff like that. Anyways,
Mhm.
you
Interesting.
know, int-
It's good to learn from you, Captain Jamie.
right now, I think that one we kind of we got
No, no, it's
sidetracked.
good. It's a good analogy. Happy you did.
Hmm. So the human brain cannot be told not to do something. Simple and complex with training. It is very important to shift things to positive
Sorry,
or
go
the
again.
affirmative.
The human brain
The
cannot
human
be
brain
told.
cannot be told not to do something. For example, don't think about elephant. And what happened? You immediately thought about an elephant. Elephant comes in your brain, right? I mean, don't, whenever you say don't, the brain, before processing it, it process it. So that's how the brain works, right? Um,
Wrong program language.
wrong program language. That's so important. That concept. When dealing with the brain or learning, or your team or your spouse or your friend, if you are able to get the program language correct, you will learn faster, you will communicate better, you will have better relationships, and you will have a more seamless process within the team. Wrong program language. Oh, that was very cool. So it says the human brain cannot be told not to do something. So then it says it's better to shift things into the affirmative. So it says not because we have read something means that we have done the work necessary to have an opinion on it.
Hmm.
How do you think about that? How many
Repeat
so-called
that again.
experts?
Not because.
So it's not because we have read something means that we have done the work necessary to have on to have an opinion on it. Are we all
All right.
entitled to our own opinions?
Are we all entitled to our own opinions? An opinion is something that we form unconsciously. When we read something, we may read one perspective and create a bias because the lack of exposure. Then this is what, not because we have read something, means we have done the work necessary to form an opinion or have an opinion on it.
To have
To
an
have an
opinion on it.
opinion, yes.
Mm.
An opinion is something we develop and form unconsciously. And it incorporates many times our biases because humans we are biased.
Right. Absolutely.
So to do the work, as it were, is to weigh objectively the facts for and against. And when we
Mm.
can do that objectively, then I think we can create an informed opinion. But to read somebody's opinion and adapt it is not doing the work necessary to create an objective opinion. Because we just probably could just take somebody's bias and make that our own.
Right. Mm.
Right. So it is
Yeah.
important to look at both sides, the two sides of the coin, for and against. And then we can
Mm.
create our own opinion. Depends on. But an opinion is not necessarily an opinion is not facts. So regardless, we form opinions, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but I think it's important that we understand, I mean, having an opinion, we all are entitled to have an opinion. I don't think we all are entitled to voice our opinions or to verbalize or to write it or to put our opinions out there. I think, I don't think that's the case. I think we have a responsibility to understand when you should hold your opinion or opinions for yourself.
That's correct. That comes with emotional intelligence too.
Mm,
Because not all the timing is important. Because voicing our opinions at times in situations can create more harm than good.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, so often we read a strong article or a book and we come out of that book experts.
Yes.
Have we done the work to inform our opinion strong enough? Um, have we done the reflection? Because knowledge without reflection is not real learning. Um,
Information.
yeah, absolutely. To really have an opinion and be an expert on a particular issue. And so the next question is, what is the purpose of thinking?
Man is a complex being. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. God said, let us, talking the Godhead, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, make
Mm,
man in our image and in our
right.
likeness, and let them have dominion. Man made in the image of God is a tripartite being: body, soul, and spirit.
Mm,
All right. So, one of the gifts, or what you call that differentiate man with animals, is the ability to think.
right.
When we think, we process. And we process, we get information from different sources. One source is the sensory organs: taste, smell, hear, feel, touch. Right? That's all?
Mm,
The five senses. So we gather data from around us using the senses. But there's another side to us when the spirit man minister to our spirits. Job said, in the night, thoughts and things will come, downloads will come. So the human mind is very complex. And we process things by thinking. So out of our thoughts comes opinions.
right.
So thinking is the foundation to formulate opinions. But our thoughts are affected by different stimuli that comes to us. Stimuli come from our environment. It comes from our socialization or upbringing. And over time, our thinking can change, depends on our reality, on our circumstance. And as we digest and ingest more and more information on situations, our thoughts can actually evolve. So, thinking is a reaction, a response to the things that we process. It's necessary,
Mm,
but a lot of it is subjective. Depends how we process the stimuli that comes at us.
hmm. Um, well, when I think about thinking, um, what comes to my mind is how brief I'm, for how short a period of time I'm able to think.
Yes.
So quickly, so quickly I think about something and then I'm back to autopilot. If you really look at how much time you spend actually thinking, it's very little. We're not designed to think too much. And therefore, a lot of the thinkers are oftentimes deemed as madmen because we are sort of programmed to function within that tunnel, those well defined boundaries that are already defined within our minds or within our society for us to just act in or on. We think for very short periods of time. That's something that strikes me. The second thing is that it is very difficult and draining on the body to think. It's not easy to think. It's hard to think when you're hungry. It's hard to think when you're not physically well. So when I think about thinking, it's further complicates itself by adding physical requirements. So there's a mental requirement, but there's
Mm.
also a physical requirement to thinking.
Mm.
And we haven't started thinking as yet. So I mean, so it's really it strikes me as to how one important it is, how little we do it, how your environment and your physical wellness or well-being is important to your thinking. And I am just kind of looking at it and to say, no wonder people just function. No wonder most of us just go with the wind and exist within the boundaries of life.
Wow. Hmm. Yes. And that is important, Jamie, and that's interesting. Because this is why many don't cross over to create. Because to create, you have to first go to the boundaries or the assumptions, to test them, to change the questions that led you to those assumptions. Because when you change the questions, you change the perspective,
Mm,
and are able to create an approach, an opportunity that looks different. Because that is the realm at which you move to create and not to compete. Because the default position is just work within what the known space.
mm, wow. Well said. Final question um, for this session. It's and this statement says consuming information is the same as acquiring knowledge. Learning, however, comes mainly from reflection and feedback.
Repeat again.
Consuming information is the same as acquiring knowledge.
Mhm.
Learning, however, comes mainly from reflection and feedback.
Well, this is deep. Um, Consuming information is the same as acquiring knowledge. Knowledge is one aspect of learning. Information is important, but information by itself cannot produce learning.
Hmm.
So, learning, however, comes from reflection and feedback because you have three dimensions of learning: one is the knowledge, two is the skill, and three is the attitude.
Hmm.
The knowledge is that head portion. The skill is that psychomotor, that part of doing. And then the attitude has to do with the mindset. So, for learning to take place, all three have to come together. So, you have to reflect and feedback. Reflection has to do with how do you apply, and feedback has to do with the processes, how do you connect around you.
Hmm.
So, for learning to take place, knowledge is all over the place. It's on Google, it's on YouTube, it's everywhere.
Right.
But until we extract that and reflect on it and work with the feedback, then learning cannot take place.
Hmm. Excellent.
So learning has to put the
And
mindset together. Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead,
No, you
please.
go
You were
ahead.
saying
Go
that.
ahead.
No, I would say learning comes when the mindset and the skill set come together.
Wow. Mindset and skill set
Yes.
comes together. Interesting. Interesting. Now I'll add this question. How do you unlearn? So to this statement, I would add learning comes mainly from reflection and feedback. But unlearning comes from the will or the desire to change. That's just rough. How do you think about unlearning? So I'm just adding it. This is just rough from the top of my head.
To unlearn is harder than to learn
Right. I would
because
probably
to
agree with that.
unlearn, you're going to go against all the assumptions that you have put together. You're going to shake your base, your understanding. To unlearn means that you're going to let go of some things that you held dearly before. But unlearning takes place when new learning comes along. I see a lot of unlearning is like the flow through method because we don't unlearn in a vacuum. We usually unlearn while we learn new things to take that space because we have a limited random access memory like a computer. So to get some things out of that space, we have to replace with new things
Mm,
because there's not a vacuum in the brain. It's reasoning. It is different questions gonna take us from unlearning to relearning. It's letting go and replacing that takes place, but we don't usually let go and put nothing there. A learning takes place in in an active situation where while unlearning is a decision, is a commitment to
mm.
change.
It's deliberate.
It's deliberate. That's it. That's the word.
Mm, interesting. A deliberate decision to change.
Yes.
The unlearn show with Jamie and Fritz. Thank you. And on that note, we say thanks for being with us. As I hope we challenged your thoughts today. I hope you found some ideas, or you got some ideas, or you found some of your predetermined or pre-held beliefs that you want to challenge, or you will look to examine, or you will seek new learning, or you'll continue to develop. I hope you're inspired. Thanks for being with us. It's Jamie and Fritz. Thanks for having us. God bless.
Thank you.